You think the hardest part of building wealth is earning more money. But that's not why your first $5,000 feels impossible. The uncomfortable truth is that it feels impossible because your brain hasn't been trained to handle momentum yet. And once that switch flips, 50,000 somehow stops feeling like a mountain and starts feeling like a checkpoint. Here's the thing. Most people watching this believe that if they could just get a better job, a raise, or one lucky break, saving and investing would finally get easier. But the exact opposite is what actually happens. Money doesn't get easier because you make more. You make more because money finally gets easier for you. My name is Marcus, and I spend way too much time thinking about how people build wealth from zero. If you're someone who feels stuck trying to save your first few $1,000s and wonders how others seem to pass that mark without stress, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, let's talk about the real problem, not the version that gets repeated online. The struggle isn't that $5,000 is objectively hard to reach. The struggle is that it's the most psychologically expensive money you'll ever earn. Every dollar in that first $5,000 is fighting against your current identity, your habits, and the invisible systems you're living inside of. Think about where most people are when they start. Rent is due. Groceries feel more expensive every month. Your bank account resets back towards zero like gravity is pulling it there. When you try to save, it feels like deprivation. Like you're sacrificing comfort now for a future version of yourself you're not even sure exists yet. That tension is exhausting. And here's what most people don't realize. Your first $5,000 isn't savings. It's resistance training. It's the phase where every dollar requires conscious effort, decision-making, and emotional restraint. There's no automation yet, no margin, no buffer. Every unexpected expense feels personal. Now let's add math to this, because this is where the illusion gets stronger. Say you make $3,500 a month after taxes. Your fixed expenses are $2,700. That leaves $800. On paper, saving $5,000 should take a little over 6 months. That sounds reasonable. But in real life, that $800 is not real. It gets eaten by birthdays, car repairs, medical copays, small, just this once purchases, and mental fatigue. So instead of 6 months, it stretches to a year, or 2, or it never happens. And during that time, you start telling yourself stories. Maybe I'm just bad with money. Maybe saving is for people who started earlier. Maybe once I make more, I'll do this properly. Those stories feel logical, but they're protecting you from a deeper truth. The system you're operating in right now is optimized to keep you hovering near zero. This is where it gets really interesting. The first $5,000 is the only money you ever save without leverage. No interest worth mentioning. No meaningful investment returns. No psychological confidence. It's pure discipline, and discipline is a limited resource. Behavioral psychologists have shown that willpower functions like a muscle. The more decisions you force it to make, the faster it gets exhausted. When you're broke or near broke, every financial choice requires willpower. Can I afford this? Should I wait? What if something goes wrong? That constant evaluation drains you. So when someone with $50,000 tells you, just save consistently, they're not lying. They're just forgetting what it feels like to save without momentum. Because at $50,000, the system has flipped. But we're not there yet. Right now, your $5,000 goal feels heavy because it represents safety you don't have. It's emergency money. It's breathing room. It's the difference between panic and inconvenience. That emotional weight makes every contribution feel small and pointless. You put away $200 and think, this doesn't change anything. Now imagine the opposite scenario. Imagine someone with $50,000 invested. Even conservatively, that money might generate $200 to $300 a month in returns over time. Not guaranteed, not linear, but possible. Suddenly, money is assisting instead of resisting. The system starts working with you. But here's the mistake. People assume the difference between 5,000 and 50,000 is income. It's not. It's friction. Early money has maximum friction. Late money has momentum. Let me give you an analogy that actually sticks. Pushing a car from a dead stop is brutal. The first few inches require the most force. Once the car is moving, keeping it moving takes dramatically less effort. Your first $5,000 is that dead stop. Your body feels every ounce of resistance. Now, most people misinterpret this resistance as a personal flaw. They think, if it's this hard now, how could I ever get to 50,000? That thought alone causes them to quit. But the resistance is actually proof you're at the exact stage everyone passes through. You're just feeling it for the first time. Here's another layer people don't talk about. At low balances, money is emotional. At higher balances, money becomes mechanical. When you have almost nothing, every dollar has a job and a story. When you have more, dollars become interchangeable units. That emotional detachment is not coldness. It's efficiency. This is why your spending feels chaotic right now. Not because you're irresponsible, but because your financial environment forces emotional decisions. You're constantly reacting instead of directing. And look, you might be thinking, okay, but some people really do have it easier. They have help. They earn more. They started earlier. And that's true. But even those people still experience this same friction at their first meaningful threshold. It might have been 10,000 instead of 5, but the pattern is identical. Repeated outcomes matter more than individual stories. Across incomes, backgrounds, and industries, the same thing shows up. The first real pile of money is always the hardest. Not because it's large, but because it's the first time you're breaking out of survival mode. Survival mode is sneaky. It tells you to optimize for now. It rewards short-term relief. It punishes long-term thinking. And until you exit it, every financial plan feels theoretical. This is the belief that quietly sabotages people. I'll start acting like a financially stable person once I have money. That belief is backwards. You don't act your way into money after the fact. You behave your way into it before the numbers show up. And this is where we dismantle a core mental model that almost everyone is carrying without realizing it. Most people believe money changes behavior. In reality, behavior changes money, and then money reinforces that behavior. Your first $5,000 isn't just cash. It's evidence. Evidence that you can delay gratification. Evidence that you can plan. Evidence that emergencies don't control you. Without that evidence, your brain refuses to trust long-term strategies. So when someone with 50,000 says it's easier, they're not flexing. They're describing a different psychological operating system. One where money is no longer the enemy. But right now, you're still pushing the car from a dead stop. And the reason it feels impossible isn't because you're weak. It's because this stage demands a level of conscious control you won't need later. The dangerous part is that most people never get past this stage. Not because they can't, but because they misread the pain. They think the pain means stop, when it actually means you're exactly where the leverage begins to form. And once that leverage appears, everything you thought you knew about saving, investing, and discipline starts to break apart, because the next phase isn't about trying harder. It's about changing the rules of the game you're playing without realizing it. Here's what actually happens once that first 5,000 exists. Your brain finally experiences something it's never had before: financial slack. Slack is the absence of urgency. It's the space between a problem and panic. And the moment slack appears, your decision-making quality jumps. This is where psychology takes over in a way most people never connect to money. When your account balance is near zero, your brain operates in what researchers call scarcity mode. Scarcity mode narrows focus. It makes you short-term oriented. You become excellent at solving immediate problems and terrible at planning. That's not a character flaw. That's biology. Once you cross a threshold like $5,000, something subtle but powerful changes. You stop checking your balance every day. A surprise expense no longer feels like an existential threat. Your nervous system calms down, and when that happens, you start making fewer emotional decisions. This is the real reason 50,000 feels easier than 5. Not because it's 10 times the money, but because it's 10 times the psychological distance from zero. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but that still doesn't explain how people actually get there. And that's fair. So let's talk mechanics, not motivation. Once you have that initial buffer, your money stops being static. It starts behaving like a system. You can automate savings without fear. You can invest without obsessively checking balances. You can delay purchases without resentment. Each of these things compounds. Here's a concrete example. Someone with no savings tries to invest $300 a month. Every month feels risky. Every dip feels like a mistake. They pull out early, second-guess themselves, or stop altogether. Now compare that to someone with $5,000 in cash and $10,000 invested. That same $300 feels routine. Boring even. Boredom is where wealth grows. This is where it gets really interesting. Momentum isn't just mathematical, it's behavioral. When you see your net worth growing, even slowly, your identity starts to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to be good with money and start seeing yourself as someone who is good with money. That identity shift is everything. And this is why income alone doesn't solve the problem. People get raises all the time and stay broke. Why? Because their identity never changes. Their spending expands to match their income. Not because they're reckless, but because their internal financial thermostat hasn't moved. The first $5,000 resets that thermostat. Now let's address a big objection that comes up here. What if I can't even get to 5,000? What if every time I get close, something happens? That's not bad luck. That's life colliding with fragility. When you have no buffer, normal events feel catastrophic. Tires wear out, doctors send bills, planes get delayed. None of that is abnormal. What's abnormal is expecting to build wealth without first building resilience. Your first 5,000 isn't about returns. It's about shock absorption. It's about breaking the pattern where every setback wipes out months of effort. This is also why the advice to invest as early as possible often backfires for beginners. If investing causes you anxiety, you're doing it too early. Cash stability comes first. Confidence comes before complexity. Look, patterns repeat. People who struggle to reach 5,000 almost always report the same behaviors. Inconsistent saving, no clear rules. Emotional spending as relief. And most importantly, treating saving as optional. People who get past that point do something boring but powerful. They install rules, not goals, rules. Here's a rule that works. Money moves first, feelings come second. That means saving happens automatically when money arrives, not if there's anything left at the end of the month. The amount doesn't matter at first. The rule does. Another rule, the first 5,000 is not for optimization. It's not for yield. It's not for clever strategies. It's for stability. Once you violate that rule, you reset the clock. Now let's talk about time, because this is where most people underestimate themselves. If you saved $200 a week, you'd hit 5,000 in 6 months. That's not theoretical. That's math. The reason it feels impossible is because most people don't anchor their behavior to time-bound actions. They save when they can. That's not a plan. That's hope. So here's a time-bound shift that changes everything. For the next 30 days, treat saving like a bill. Non-negotiable. Same day every week. Same amount. No decisions required. You don't need to feel motivated. You just need to remove choice. Once you do that long enough, something surprising happens. Your life reorganizes around the rule. You spend less without trying. You delay purchases without stress. Not because you're disciplined, but because your system adjusted. This is the part people never explain. Financial growth is less about adding effort and more about removing friction. When you remove decision points, behavior becomes consistent. Consistency creates results. Results reinforce identity. And once that identity locks in, 50,000 doesn't feel aspirational. It feels inevitable. Before we wrap this up, I want to establish something clearly. This isn't theory. These patterns show up again and again, across different incomes, different industries, different backgrounds. The people who cross their first real savings threshold don't magically become smarter. They stop fighting their own psychology. They stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Does this align with the system I've built?" That's a higher level question. And it only becomes available after the first barrier is broken. So if you're stuck at zero or hovering just above it, don't judge yourself. You're not behind. You're in the hardest part, the part with the least reward and the most resistance. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're early. The calm truth is this: wealth doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, through boring rules applied consistently over time. The first $5,000 teaches you how to do that. 50,000 just proves you learned the lesson. If this shifted how you think about money, do me a favor. Like the video so it reaches someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe if you want more grounded conversations about building wealth without hype, and comment below with one rule you're committing to follow this month. That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.